Tonight I saw Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. If you watch my channel, you know that I was very excited for this movie because the first two trailers to this were incredible. It captured such heart and emotion, and I was all down for that because it's the MCU. You know, we get fun, light movies, but to get something this raw and emotional, I was all down for it. And to compare this to the first one, the first movie I think is a very well written movie with some MCU problems with dulled down CGI, lackluster visuals, and it's kind of funny how this movie's a little bit of the opposite situation because it's hard to compare these. I don't think the script to this movie is quite as good as the first Black Panther, but from a filmmaking and cinematography action sequence perspective, this movie did a much better job. So it's hard to compare the two because I kind of think the same of them. It's just one excels at one and one excels at the other. What was the best thing about this movie? And that it was a very emotional, raw journey from a character perspective. Outside of Marvel and the one or two DC movies that we get a year, we don't get that very much. Of course, we got that through the Batman. I love spectacle. I love big action blockbusters. It's my genre. It's my thing. So to see a movie with effort put behind the scenes, it's just nice to see. And to reach that emotional level that very few movies hit, it's really touching. And obviously a lot of that is fueled by the passing of Chadwick Boseman. Obviously that really impacted the cast of this film, the director, and everyone involved, because you can tell that there's just a whole other level of care put into this movie, particularly from the actors, because Shuri goes through an emotional journey. The whole entire movie is her emotional journey. Of course, there's the mother played by Angela Bassett, and she gives a phenomenal performance. I know she's getting Oscar talk, and she is really, really good in the movie. Can't remember the actress's name. Okoye. She's really good. Lupita Nyong'o, the whole entire cast, Winston Duke, everyone, Martin Freeman. You see that there's a whole extra layer of depth to this that you won't be able to get out of maybe any other MCU movie ever again, unless if something like this were to happen again, which is not something that we're going to be hoping for. The biggest addition to this movie is Namor, the new villain. And there was a lot of talk about Namor. I know they were really in the marketing campaign, really hyping him up. And so I really wanted to see what he can bring. The marketing team hyping him up might have been a little bit of a mistake because I watched Black Panther the night before watching Wakanda Forever. The first Black Panther has a very strong villain. That is Michael B. Jordan's Killmonger. I don't think Namor lived up to Killmonger. While Namor is still a really strong villain and without a doubt one of the better villains that we've gotten in the MCU has been stepping up their villains within the last couple movies. Namor is another really great addition of a villain. It's just when I watched Black Panther the night before, then I inevitably compare them. Namor just doesn't live up to Killmonger to me. While Namor was still a very complex character, and they give backstory to him that's very dark, brutal, and rooted into something that overarcs all the characters together, and they do this montage at the end that really connects it for you and does all the visual storytelling for you instead of kind of letting you figure it out. This movie also did step it up with the action sequences. I love the South Korea sequence in the first Black Panther, and I don't think I liked an action sequence as much as I liked that. Overall, the first Black Panther had some iffy action sequences, particularly in the third act. The action throughout this whole entire movie is pretty good, particularly whenever Okoye is on screen and she's using her spear, doing the little spinny stuff, is when you know you're going to get some really cool things. And she also had a really strong comedy, and this movie did not have the Marvel movie jokes. It felt like jokes that humans would make. It felt very human in the comedy. So whenever I heard a joke, I was like, haha, MCU. I'm like, wait, that's not like normal. Of course, we have Winston Duke here, and he plays M'Baku, and he brings a lot of the more MCU-like comedy, but whenever Okoye is on screen and there's a joke with her, it's actually genuinely funny. Like I said, the action throughout is really, really good, and a huge step up compared to the first Black Panther, although the first Black Panther does have that one sequence I do really, really like. The third act to this movie can feel very familiar at moments, particularly with its execution, the way they place their characters, where they place the characters, the CGI. The CGI in the third act is where it shows the most, but I don't think it falls into the trap like the first Black Panther does. Whenever Riri Williams as Ironheart shows up on screen and she's in suit is when it looks quite bad. But besides that, everything else looked passable. There's some other CGI in the third act I really can't describe unless I'm getting into spoilers, but it all looked very good, particularly whenever there's water and a big object. Well, you saw it in the preview, but that huge Wakanda thing that's in the middle of the ocean, it all looked very, very good. And I know you saw the shot in the trailer, but they do it a little bit differently in the movie. But when they're preparing for battle and they jump off the side of the cliff and the Dora Milaje is jumping down the side towards the my God, I sound like such a nerd right now. Towards the water people. They do it differently in the movie, and it gave me full body chills. Everything is built up, tension-wise, very, very well. That doesn't stop the third act to still feel very familiar in its execution for an MCU movie, but it's a more well-done version of the MCU formula in the third act. But still, it did bother me a little bit. But this, even though, like I said, this CGI at moments wasn't the best in the third act, the visuals throughout the whole entire movie looked great. This movie looked really, really good, and the cinematography is really, really strong, particularly the way they use the water, and they have like these water bombs, and you saw, I know they showed it in recent marketing, these water bombs that just go, they explode, and Ryan Coogler does a smart move, and goes into slow-mo, and it looks so cool every time, and it all builds to one thing in the third act that just made my jaw drop to the floor. It's a really cool use of slow-mo, and it's a really cool use of water bombs. Speaking of the water people, what are they called? The Tarjans or something like that? I can't remember. The world building that Ryan Coogler does in this movie is really, really good. Particularly the way they build up the Marvel Atlanteans, as I call them. The visuals there are really strong. It reminds me of Aquaman. It just immerses you in this whole new world, and it's very well directed and very well shown of what the type of messaging that they want to do. Of course, like I said, the passing of Chadwick Boseman really affected this film, obviously, and this movie opens and ends really, really strong. And so I can see a lot of audience members just taking that first scene and taking that last scene and being like, this movie is incredible. And I get that. I'm not going to say that you're wrong to think that, because an opinion's an opinion. But I do think there are things in the middle between the first scene and the last scene that needed work. And the first scene and the last scene are incredible. It's the best opening and the best ending of any movie this year. It's the best opening and ending of maybe all of Marvel, because it's so raw and it tunes into that emotion because of that loss of Chadwick. But the second act was a little clunky. It's because I felt like there was 3 storylines. There was no head storyline, and that's where I felt the absence of Chadwick Boseman's T'Challa the most, because I felt like I was watching 3 storylines, but I didn't know which one to prioritize. Particularly, there's this one storyline that I really can't get into because of spoilers, and I'll just say it involves a character, another character shows up. That's kind of a MCU surprise, but they focus a little bit on them, and I just would have cut that whole character out of the movie because of how non-MCU like this movie already is. To kind of jump to something that's so Marvel Cinematic Universe, it's a little jarring to keep on cutting back and forth, particularly in the second act. Towards the end of the movie, they do a montage of conversations and other things that I wanted to see the whole conversation. And so I felt like the movie needed a little bit of work in the editing room, maybe shorten that runtime, get rid of that one surprise character, bring in those scenes that were montaged in the third act. That's where I think the biggest flaw is. There's some things that were prioritized that shouldn't, and things that in the third act that I would have liked to see more fleshed out. I can't really get much more into spoilers because this is a very spoilery movie. As I didn't think this would be a big spoilery movie. I thought this would be, Atlantean, well, I know they're not Atlanteans, Atlantis versus Wakanda, and that's it. That's what I kind of expected most out of this movie, but this movie actually has a lot to offer, and it's because it has a lot to offer, it's a very overwhelming movie. I hope I don't come off as too vague. I'm trying my best to review this. This is a movie I need to rewatch, because this movie has a lot to bring you. Right now, I don't know if on a rewatch I'm going to like it more or think it's more of a hodgepodge. As of right now, I think it's just so heavy and such a long movie, I just need to watch it again. because I know a lot of people online on Twitter right now are probably overwhelmed and saying, "Oh, it was a hodgepodge of randomness." But other movies, like a good example is last year when I saw Dune. I was completely overwhelmed. I didn't even know what to think, and I just watched it again when I got home on HBO Max. So, and then I watched it again. I was like, okay, I get it more. I don't feel as dense as I was before. And I feel the same way with this movie. I feel people just because it's MCU, people think that they can say, "Oh, it's hodgepodgey," and because I was overwhelmed and blah blah blah. I just don't think that's the right assumption, because with a completely different movie like Dune, a movie that I love, people need to actually see this movie again before they say it's hodgepodgey, because we all saw it. It's a heavy movie. It has a lot going on. I don't think we can properly call this movie one big hodgepodge of MCU randomness when you haven't seen it more than one time, so you can fully take it all in, because it's nearly a 3-hour movie, even though like I said, it can cut down. But overall, this movie delivered on exactly what I wanted. It gave me the promise that the trailers gave me, which was you're going to get a raw, emotional story and personal journey in the MCU. And I got exactly that. No, it's not my favorite movie in the MCU. It might not even be top 10. But I'm just glad that we have this movie. I don't think we're going to get a movie like this again. Like I said, on a rewatch, this can be top 10. I think when I placed it on my list, it's like number 11. I'm excited to watch it again, and I really hope to watch it again, maybe even this weekend, because I did really enjoy it from beginning to end. I do have my problems, but this was a movie I loved watching. Anyways, I'm going to give Black Panther Wakanda Forever, as of now, an 8.4 out of 10. That score, I suspect, will change on second watch. Either it will go down or it will go up, but I don't expect that score to stay the same when I watch it again. Comment down below if you guys saw Black Panther Wakanda Forever. I am very curious to see what other people think of this movie, because it's been quite the conversation to watch online. There's people who think this is a near perfect film. There's people who think that it's fine. There's people who are disappointed. So I'm very curious to see where you guys land in the conversation. Like, share, subscribe, and stuff like that, and adios.